Hey everyone, it's Justine, and today I'm going to be creating some beginner to advanced cards using the Concord and 9th birthday stack stamp set. This is a really great versatile birthday stamp because it comes with so many different things on the stamp set. So you have the gifts, the candles, you have the party hats or banners, depending which way you flip, as well as the circles, as well as several coordinating dies. So they cut out the tops of these four shapes, like the tops of the candles and the tops of the presents. As I mentioned, the banners could be used as party hats or as banners, and there's a little pom-pom stamp that comes with it. And same with the circles. They could come as decorative circles for any sort of card, or you can add the strings at the bottom to make balloons, or you could add the banner solid stamp at the bottom to make ice cream cones. Completely up to you how you want to use the stamp set. What I like as well is that it comes in an outline, so you can use it for coloring, or you can use it with the solid stamps to just stamp inside. So let's get started. Now for my most simple beginner project today, I'm going to be using the VersaMark ink here to stamp out the circles. I apologize, I'm so zoomed in, it zooms out in just a moment. And I just stamped that on a piece of 4 by 5 1/4 Neenah Solar White cardstock. And I'm going to fill in each of these circles here using a block as well as my coordinating stamp set that comes with it. Now, as you know, if you watch my channel, I am a big fan of the MISTI stamping tool that I use to stamp this. However, the only time I find it semi-inconvenient is when I am stamping the same stamp over and over again on the same card. So I'm just going to remove it from my MISTI stamping tool right now, and then I'm going to start stamping the actual designs. I'm going to be using Catherine Pooler ink. I'm using 3 different colors, and I'm going to keep those colors consistent throughout the cards. I'm using Party Dress, Lime Rickey, and Tiki Torch. And I'm going to be stamping the insides of this card here. So the stamps are really cute and they're really easy to line up, and you just need to stamp right in the center and then you're good to go. And one trick or strategy is to have inks here that you're going to be using that coordinate with each other, which means when they mix together they don't make a brown color because they are going to overlap and make some other fun shades. I'm going to ink up the balloon string now, and I'm just going to ink that up for each one of these balloons to create those. As I mentioned in the video at the beginning, you can actually use the triangle from the stamp set to create ice cream cones if you like, so you can really switch it up. It's completely up to you. And I'm not going to use any of the dies for this set here so that you're able to see what it's like if you're just interested in getting the stamp set. So I stamped all of the balloons, finished stamping those, and now I need to grab the sentiment, and I'm going to stamp the Let's Celebrate, and it comes in 2 different ones, so you could have the Let's or Celebrate or coordinate them with other sentiments in the stamp set. And I'm just stamping that in black on the card for a nice, clean, and simple look. The last thing I need to do here is just add this to a card base. I always like to add my card bases to my panels so that I get a nice white frame around the outside, and that's it. So that was a card that was a very beginner style card, just some simple stamping and then some cutting of some cardstock, and it's really quite limited supplies. For the next one here, I am going to be using a combination of the stamps and dies, but this is easily adaptable if you don't have the die set. So I'm just inking it up. I'm going to stamp it on the bottom here, and then because I'm using the MISTI stamping tool, it's super easy to just go ahead and adjust. I just remove the stamp set, and I'm going to remove that, ink it up again, and then stamp it in that spot. You could also move your cardstock up and down the MISTI as well. That would work. However, I did want to space it out so that I could fit 4 on here, and I wanted the flames to overlap the fold on my card base. And the reason why is I wanted to create sort of a pop-up card with the flames at the top instead of a flat bottom. So I'm going and I'm adding the die here to the top of the very last set that I just stamped. I'm going to run that through my die cutting machine. And now I'm going to go ahead and remove my cardstock, and now you'll see that I have a completely pointed bottom, and I'm just going to go ahead and poke out some of those areas there that were still left over from the die cutting process. I'm going to go ahead and add my stamps this time. So it comes with the flame stamp as well as the stamp for all of the candles. It comes with 2 different stamps for the candles. Also, it comes with a solid as well as a striped pattern. And I'm just going ahead and stamping those completely out. I am going to leave 3 out of the 4 of them black and white. I think adding just that pop of color really is going to look quite nice. And I personally didn't want to have the colors going in an order, like green, pink, yellow, green, pink, yellow. I wanted to kind of have it random and fun. So I'm now going to mount this onto a card base, and it is slightly larger than my card base itself. So you may want to, if you're putting this in an envelope, to actually cut down the panel a little bit if you'd like, which I'm going to do now. So you can see there that the candles pop off the top and they look really, really neat. I like the way that it's not a flat top at the top of it. So I'm just going to grab my paper trimmer, and I am going to measure it down so that the top with the candles measures 5.5, so that it's going to fit into all of my envelopes. Then I decided to go ahead and just add the flames once again to the top of the candles here, just to add a little bit more of a pop of color. The last thing I need to do is just go ahead and add my sentiment. So I went onto a piece of white cardstock and I stamped "Let's Celebrate" onto a scrap piece of paper, and I cut it down into a rectangle shape so that I could mount this onto my card. And then I just simply wanted to mount it onto my card, but I found it got a little lost on the cardstock. So what I ended up doing was I just pulled it off of my card here, and then I went ahead and just swiped the edges onto my black ink pad just to give it a little bit of a extended look. It also pops out a little bit better, I think, on the card. So that's the end of the two fairly easy cards, one with the very simple stamping, one adding a slight die cut, and now we're going to go into a 3D project. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stamp several of these pieces here onto a white piece of cardstock. I am going to cut all of these out. It is important that the cardstock that you're working on is bigger than the stamp set itself, I mean wider in that sense, and that you also have room in between each of the stamp sets for the die cut to actually fit, if you want to cut them all at the same time and save some time. Okay, so I finally settled on these three here. I'm going to ink up the party hats, the presents, and as well as the candles. I am going to use the party hats as banners this time, and I am going to stamp them twice actually onto the cardstock. So I'm just going to go ahead and do that off screen. I'm then going to go ahead and add each one of these solid areas to the stamp sets so I don't have to color. So those of you that enjoy coloring, this is a great stamp set as well because you're able to do that if you like. If you're like me and you're not so much a fan of taking that much time all the time, then you can go ahead and just stamp normally. Now for me, using a stamp set that stamps solid and perfect each time is super important when doing this because I am stamping with a block and not my MISTI. I never really have to worry about that with Catherine Pooler inks because they stamp solid every time. They have a little bit different foam pad than the traditional felt pad. They are a foam pad, so I find that the ink just really saturates the stamp and gets enough on there, which is a little bit different than regular dye inks. If you're using a dye ink, I would suggest using your MISTI so you can ink it up more often, if necessary. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to attach all of these dyes onto the card, and I'm going to secure them with some washi tape. Okay, so once they're all secured, I'm going to send those through my die cutting machine. I am going to have to die cut the banners twice because I only have one die and two different sets. So you're going to notice when you take it off that obviously it doesn't cut through the entire cardstock because my cardstock is too wide. It also has this little notch in there as well, and that's going to give you an indication about where you're going to end up using your fold. So after I've removed all of the dies, I'm going to go ahead and grab my paper trimmer here, and I am going to cut these out, so that piece at the end of each one of them that's not cut at all, I'm going to go ahead and line up that area and just cut off any of the excess. So I do want to keep that 1/2 inch or so that is on the side cut because I am going to need that to fold later, and I do want them to be the same length on each side. So I could have measured this out before I actually cut my cardstock earlier to avoid this step. So now I have all of my pieces, they're all cut out on the sides and I separated them as well. And I'm going to go in where that notch is and a ruler, and I'm going to add a line using my bone folder, or you could use a stylus tool, whichever works, and I'm just going to bend them. The length you make the actual pieces itself varies. So if you want to have the presents overlooking top of the other items, then you're going to need it bigger. And once I start putting it together, I'll explain that again and it'll make more sense. The last thing I want to do is I want to grab a larger piece of cardstock. So this is a 1/2 piece of an 8.5 by 11, and I'm going to go ahead and attach this piece on there as well. I'm going to do the same thing, run that through my die cutting machine, trim the edges, and then I will have my card base all ready to go. So I have ran that through my die cutting machine. I'm going to remove the top, grab my paper trimmer and trim down those edges. And then I am going to go once again where those notches are. So the notches are at either side of the arch. And I'm going to use my scoring tool this time to make a fold line. And this is going to fold up to make my 3D card. And what's really cool in the end is that this 3D card actually folds down later. So I'm going to go ahead and reinforce those fold lines here to make sort of like a stage almost. And that's where I'm going to end up gluing everything on. The only thing I have to make sure in order for it to fit in an envelope later is that the whole card is smaller than 4 1/4 inches on this side. So I went ahead and trimmed that down. Okay, so I now have this folded stage. You can see I can fold the sides down and it's going to fall flat each time. And so I can mail this with no issue. Now I've grabbed all my pieces here and you can see I cut them some bigger than the others, and I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to trim the banners. So these are not going to be 3D. I could have made them 3D if I wanted, but I'm going to lay these down diagonally onto my 3D piece here just to create sort of a background, almost as if they were hanging on a wall. So now that my banners are all finished, I'm going to go ahead and add my 3D pieces now. You can see that I have these folded down, and you could add some glue. I would actually recommend tape runner versus liquid glue because the liquid glue takes a while to dry, so it took me a little bit of fiddling here to actually put this down. If you were using a tape runner or some of the red tape, then that would be much easier in the end. You can see I left a fair amount of white space at the bottom of the presents because I knew that I wanted the candles to go at the bottom and I didn't want them to get covered up too much. So you can place probably about 3 different things in here based on the width of the panels on the side, and you're going to get these, and you can see they fold right down so you're able to mail them in an envelope. It looks so fun and really cool. Now I decided I wanted a sentiment, so I went ahead and I die cut the Celebrate die that comes in the die set, and I cut that twice, and I'm just going ahead and removing that from the cardstock, and you can see that it cuts so that it stays attached to the cardstock still, so it's not just Celebrate on its own, it actually doesn't cut out the bottom, so you can add a little strip at the bottom there for easy adhering. The reason why I cut 2 is because I thought it would get a little lost on the cardstock, so I wanted to find a way that I could actually make it not get lost. So I die cut the 2 of them. I trimmed them down so they had a really thin border, and I went ahead with my party dress ink pad and I went ahead and inked everything up so that it would look really cool. I think it looks really nice, and it's almost as if I had matching cardstock for the ink that I used. I'm going to trim down both Celebrates, and then I'm going to go ahead and layer one on top of the other using some liquid glue here so that I get a little bit of pink in the background, but it's not overwhelming and my card stays pretty clean and simple still, even though it has a lot of fun color. There's a reason why these inks are called Party Collection, because the ink colors are just so much fun. Okay, so once those were all finished, I added a strip of glue to the bottom and a little bit onto each one of the letters here so that I would be able to adhere it to my card. And I'm going to adhere it just on the bottom here, so it's actually just flat up against the candles, and I had to trim down a little bit. But I could have left, of course, the panels on the side and made that 3D as well so that it didn't stick up. But I thought that might be a little bit too delicate. Wasn't quite sure. So now I'm just going to go ahead and show you how you can add a gift card very quickly to this. So these are removable glue dots by Glue Dots, and I like the fact that you can have these removable ones, so you can add a gift certificate to really any type of card without having a fancy die or having to put any sort of cuts or anything like that. I just put one on the back here, take it off, and that will temporarily adhere it down to my card. I got this card here, it's LCBO, that's our local liquor store, and I grabbed it because it was the same color as the party dress ink, and I thought that would look really nice for a friend. So that's the end of this 3D fun flat laying piece of artwork here. I hope you enjoyed it. Here's a final look at all 3 of the projects, from beginner to sort of intermediate to advanced card making techniques. I hope you enjoyed the fact that you could use this stamp set in so many different versatile ways. If you'd like to check out some of my suggested videos, I have one there for you, or you can go ahead and subscribe to my channel if you're interested. All the supplies are listed below in the video description as well as on my blog. Have a great day, everyone, and a great start to your week.